The Knights had one good game, and I thought I could escape you. Bold of you to assume you can keep me away this easy. Yeah, I knew that was going to be a tough ask, but I could dream, you know. I'm trying to be more like Gold Guy, a little bit more optimism. Clearly, it was misguided. Well, Vegas Golden Knights lose at home to the Colorado Avalanche by a final score of 3-2. Now, the lineups for the Golden Knights in this game was pretty much a carbon copy of their previous game against the Winnipeg Jets. Only difference being Logan Thompson gets the start in place of Aiden Hill, with the goaltending matchup tonight being Logan Thompson versus Alexander Georgiev. So, this is going to be a tough task for the Golden Knights. Everybody knows this, coming in playing the Stanley Cup champions on the back end of a back-to-back for the Avalanche. They're coming off of 2 consecutive losses, but the Golden Knights coming off of their win a couple of nights ago against the Winnipeg Jets. So a good start is going to be paramount for whoever wants to win this game. The first period started off a little bit shaky for the Golden Knights, as really we just kind of dominated the play, as strange as that sounds. Started with the fourth line, great start for William Carrier. He had a partial breakaway past, of all players, Cale Makar, and gave the Golden Knights a really good shot just seconds into the game. And then just a few seconds following that, Mark Stone gets set up on a really good pass from Brett Howden from behind the net. And this is a goal if Stone lifts it a few more inches. It hit Georgiev's top half of his leg pad, and if it had just been a little bit higher, it would have been the Golden Knights ahead 1-0. That being said, the good start was kind of all for naught, as the Golden Knights would take a penalty pretty early on. Shea Theodore getting caught for tripping at 4:59. It was a little bit of a marginal call, but, you know, it is what it is. These two teams are becoming heated rivals, so you don't, as an official, want to let the game get out of hand. That being said, the Golden Knights have been pretty solid on the penalty kill. All things being equal, so have the Colorado Avalanche been exceptional on the power play, coming into this game against the Knights over 50% on the power play for the young season. And it didn't take the Colorado Avalanche very long to remind the Golden Knights why they're over 50%, as Nathan MacKinnon would score on the power play to put the Colorado Avalanche up 1-0. Now, this was a little bit of a frustrating one for the Golden Knights, as we had the opportunity to clear the puck and it wasn't done. And it was just a quick play in, ultimately resulting in a MacKinnon one-timer from the top of the right circle, off the left post behind Logan Thompson, and in, giving the Avalanche their 1-goal lead. So McKinnon's third of the year from Makar at 5:39 gets the scoring going. And this kind of kicks off what can arguably be the most frustrating bit of the Golden Knights season so far. Now, I know the second period against the Calgary Flames a couple of games ago where they took 6 penalties was frustrating. But this middle of the first period was objectively even more frustrating, if not the worst period or part of a period the Golden Knights have played this season so far. As we've done nothing beyond the first 2 minutes, including 7 minutes of nothingness following the goals against. There was a time where we had 3 times more icings than we had shots about 9 minutes into the game. We were just having a really hard time getting in the offensive zone, out of the defensive zone, and moving the puck through the neutral zone. With 3 minutes to go in the period, the Golden Knights were being outshot attempted for the period 28-5. Essentially, this means that the only reason the game is still even remotely close at this point is because A, the defensemen are doing a really good job of blocking shots, and B, Logan Thompson is having another stellar game. He's yet to have a bad start for us this year, and it showed early on in this game that he was, again, having another very solid start. That being said, the period isn't over until the period's over, as the Golden Knights had their first real chance and first real shot from an interesting break-in as Shea Theodore is drawing a penalty. But it wasn't the shot that broke the Golden Knights shotless streak. That honor goes to a 220-foot shot from our defensive zone that just, happened to be on net. And so the laws of hockey say that because the goalie had to make a save, it counts as a shot. This was the first real shot since essentially 2 minutes into the game. But ultimately, as a result of this play, Mikko Rantanen gets called for a slashing penalty at 18:52. So the Colorado Avalanche are 1-for-1 on their power play, and this is our first power play of the game. And Jonathan Marchessault gets to capitalize and tie the game up for the Golden Knights late in the first period on one of the strangest power play goals I think I've ever seen. You say strange, I say fun. This is why we aren't friends. You got to do the last video, I get to do this video. Let me say what I want to say. I'm going to use the words I want to say. Yeesh. Anyway, it was a little bit of a strange goal, as it was just kind of a weird bouncing puck, clearing or centering attempt or something from the half wall on the far side of the ice, chipped straight up in the air, and happened to land right on Mark Stone's glove in the slot. He puts it down and goes behind the back, no look, to a wide open Jonathan Marchessault, who pots it behind Alexander Georgiev just inside the right post. It was just, in absence of basically any offensive momentum for the Golden Knights throughout the majority of the first period, the fact that they were able to tie it up and do something that resembled offense at this junction of the game was honestly really impressive. That shows the resolve not only in the defense to keep it 1-0 for an extended period of time, but also the opportunistic nature that is the Golden Knights power play, taking advantage of what can only be described as a strange mistake and strange bounce, and resulting it in having it go up on the scoreboard instead of having it go by the boards, as was so often the case in the last season. So Marchessault's 5th of the year from Stone and Eichel at 1917. This is Mark Stone's 300th career assist, so congratulations for that. At least there's some positives to take away. And with that, we thought we would be getting right to the horn, but Keegan Colasar took a shot right at the very end that made us all hold our breaths as we thought, the Knights might go into the period with the lead. But no, alas, Georgiev made the save and the horn had expired anyway. So that marks the end of the first period, with the game knotted up at 1. Now, we were outshot attempted in that period 32-11, outshot 11-6. We were only 41 from the dot, and we were being outhit 18-13. So we were getting pretty dramatically outplayed throughout the majority of that first period. And if you watch the game, it was very obvious. And if you look at the stats, it was even more obvious. Logan Thompson really had to bail everybody out. There were 16 minutes of the period where the offense just wasn't there. For how terrible of a period it was offensively, the defense did a really, really good job of minimizing the danger to some extent. Obviously, you're not going to keep the Colorado Avalanche to a minimum chance for the majority of the game, especially in this first period when they dominated the game. The fact that they were able to keep a majority of the shots to the outside, but still, obviously, Thompson had to work a little bit as they have the talent to get to the interior of the ice. And a combination of good defensive structure and some great goaltending from Thompson is the reason the game is tied. Now, I got to hark on the offense as they went 15 minutes and 57 seconds between their second and third shot of the game. I thought it was kidding. I thought the stat line was wrong when I saw that we didn't have that many shots for that extended period of time. But I guess that's just the way it is. You're going almost 16 minutes without a shot. It's still not the longest drought in team history. It's actually the third longest drought in team history. I'm pretty sure it's up there with the time we didn't land a single shot in the first period against the Montreal Canadiens and wound up winning that game back in November of last year. So that was fun. But ultimately, the game is tied after 1, and despite the Golden Knights not being the best team, not even remotely being the second best team on the ice in a game of 2 teams, the game is still tied up, and there's still a lot of optimism going into the second period. And the second period started off with a little bit more of the same from the Colorado Avalanche, basically being absolute dominance in every sector of the game. Started off with a really good save by Logan Thompson on a Val Nichushkin tip play, catching it off the block or directing it into the corner, as good goaltenders do. And then there was a really, really kind of irritating moment just a little bit later on, a few minutes into the period, where we got a really big mismatch on the ice. Colorado had their top line out versus our fourth line, and as much as I think Nick Waugh, Will Carrier, and Keegan Colas are incredible shutdown forwards, they're going to have a really hard time against the likes of Cale Makar, Nathan MacKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, Val Nichushkin, and Bo Byram. That's just a mismatch, and it resulted in yet another penalty for the Golden Knights, as Brett Howden got caught for slashing at 4:51. The first wave for the Colorado power play was very, very effective. They had a lot of shots and a lot of good opportunities, but Logan Thompson stood strong. Ultimately, the second wave was actually able to do a lot more damage, and unfortunately, this damage was shown on the scoreboard as Evan Rodriguez would put the Colorado Avalanche ahead 2-1 on a power play goal that looks eerily similar to the one that the Colorado Avalanche and Nathan MacKinnon scored in the first period. Wait, you're telling me that they scored 2 power play goals? I thought that one was just a replay of the MacKinnon one in the first period. Yes, unfortunately, my optimistic friend, it was the exact same kind of goal as the Colorado Avalanche scored in the first period. Difference being, it wasn't Nathan MacKinnon at the dot. It was Evan Rodriguez, and it was basically from the exact same spot above the right circle, and it was off the exact same post, off the left post behind Logan Thompson, and in, giving the Colorado Avalanche their 2-1 lead. Following the Colorado goal, there was actually a string of really good shifts for the Golden Knights, kind of capped off by 2 or 3 really strong scoring chances. It was basically the biggest display of offense the Golden Knights had had since tying the game up late in the first period. And then ultimately it kind of culminated in a power play as Josh Manson got a holding penalty at 13:30. There was a really good chance by Waugh on a crazy bounce out of the corner. Really good save by Georgiev. He just, if Waugh was left-handed, this is probably a goal because he had to adjust his stance to corral the puck coming from the right corner into the middle of the ice right on his tape. And, it might have got a little bit of a block as well. And then a few seconds later, Mark Stone had the really, really good opportunity to tie the game up at 2. But unfortunately, Byram was there falling back into the crease as Georgiev had completely sold out and was out of the picture altogether. And Byram sprawls out, and just happens to kick the puck out of the air as that puck was earmarked for the 6x4 that was completely vacated. Stone looks skyward. There's no way that Byram came back to save that goal, but alas, he did. So the game remains 2-1, even though the Golden Knights are starting to dominate the offensive play. Ultimately, in the back end of the period, the Golden Knights were really the dominant team. They just weren't able to find the back of the net. Momentum is good. Offensive momentum is even better. But that being said, you've got to try and find a way to get the puck in the back of the net. And ultimately, the Golden Knights weren't able to really do that in the second period. As the last thing that happened of note is that Nathan MacKinnon took a holding penalty, with literally 1 second to go in the period. So the Golden Knights do get to start the third period on the power play, and this has been a special teams clinic so far on both sides of the ice, so maybe that'll be beneficial. But ultimately, despite the dominating play, they weren't able to do anything about it on the scoreboard other than make the fans get kind of excited for some near misses. Through 2 periods, Vegas was definitely the better team in the second period, just not able to score with it. We are tied in shots at this point with the Avalanche 21-21. Leading the Avs 16-11 for total shots in the period. Knights have now moved to 57% from the dot, and the real terrifying statistic is that through 2 periods, the Golden Knights have 26 shot blocks. That's not hyperbole, 26 shot blocks through 2 periods. Proof that the defense core and Logan Thompson are under siege, and that it's really entered a period of bend but don't break for the Golden Knights D core. Hopefully they're able to keep it up throughout the third period and ultimately get back into this game with a game-tying goal. So the third period begins with the last minute and 59 seconds of the Nathan MacKinnon penalty that he took at the very end of the second. The first wave of the power play had little sustained zone time, a lot of forced passes, not a lot of good chemistry, not a lot of good shots. They were just trying to pass the puck behind Georgiev and in the net just by trying to set up a perfect play. And Colorado just collapses too fast in the defensive zone. They get on puck carriers too fast for that kind of thing to work. So ultimately, the first wave went by with nothing really to show for it. The second wave had some better chances, but there was still little sustained pressure, not recording many shots, if at all. Fortunately, the Golden Knights get to get right back on the power play as JT Compher took a hooking penalty at 4:13. The first wave was just a hot mess, unfortunately. You open up the period, 2 power plays in the first 6 minutes. This is the time where you can jump on them. It's still a 1-goal game. Getting that equalizer on the power play could be game-changing because for all intents and purposes, we've entered next goal win territory. So following the first wave being an absolute hot mess, no crisp passes, they could barely get into the zone. The second wave was slightly more action again, but it was still a whole lot of nothing, and ultimately 2 minutes tick off the clock on a Golden Knights power play without landing a single shot. And unfortunately, this inability to take advantage of these power plays will ultimately come back to bite us as Valeri Nichushkin would put Colorado ahead 3-1. Now, I really got to give credit where credit's due because it was an exceptional goal. He took it coast to coast, but I wouldn't be doing my job as the eternal voice of pessimism and upsetty if I didn't simply tell it as it is. He went the entire length of the ice and threw 3 Golden Knights defenders and put it past Thompson without so much as getting touched. It's almost like the defenders just forgot how to defense, going coast to coast past 3 players, completely unassisted, and basically putting the at the moment appeared to be the last nail in the coffin on this game for the Golden Knights. Nichushkin's 6th goal of the season. Mind you, this is a guy who had 0 goals in 57 games with the Dallas Stars just 3 years ago. He's got 6 goals in the young season, this one being unassisted at 8:12 of the third period. Now, ultimately, in an ideal world, this would have been shut down. The defenders would have been able to take advantage of this. And one would hope that the pair of Braden McNabb and Shea Theodore would have been able to prevent that from happening. But ultimately, what happened, happened. There's nothing anyone can do about it. So all we can do is move on and try and answer. What was interesting is there's a bit of a line shakeup from Bruce Cassidy at this point. He split up the top six and moved Phil Kessel down to the third line and kind of started to load up a bit, setting up a line of Chandler Stevenson, Mark Stone, and Jack Eichel, and reuniting the Misfits for the first time in the season. And ultimately, this line shakeup would actually yield dividends pretty early, as Chandler Stevenson would put the Golden Knights back in the game and make it 3-2. Basically, it becomes a one-shot game at this point, thank you to Chandler Stevenson. It was set up from a turnover behind the net by Eichel, and it was just a really pretty goal. We score a lot of really pretty goals on Chaos, and this was no exception. Stevenson's second of the year from Eichel and Stone at 10:32. The loaded up line clearly worked. It was clearly paying off, and hopefully it would be able to continue to do so into the remainder of the third period, as I highly doubt after a goal you're going to break up the line that just scored. And clearly reuniting the Misfit line paid off pretty well, because shortly after Chandler Stevenson put the Knights only down by one, William Karlsson came within about 4 inches of tying up the game, as he was able to take the puck and ring it off the post, crashing the net on a Riley Smith shot. It was just a couple inches away from being a tie hockey game, but ultimately it didn't go in. It was just a few inches too high, and ultimately the chance kind of went by the wayside with nothing really more to show from it. The Golden Knights were pushing really, really hard in the last 6 minutes, and it's really kind of a shame that they didn't start the game this way with this amount of urgency, because 5-on-5, the Golden Knights are absolutely the better team in this game. But ultimately, you need the extra attacker, and Logan Thompson gets called to the bench with 2 minutes and 34 seconds to go. There was a lot of really good chances with the goalie out, a couple of really good scoring opportunities, whether it be from the top line, whether it be from the Misfit line, whether it even be from the third line that was out for a little bit, featuring players, like Phil Kessel. That being said, Alexander Georgiev was just the better goalie in this third period. No offense to Logan Thompson, who again had another incredible outing for the Golden Knights, but ultimately, Colorado also bent but didn't break, as they're able to hold on and defeat the Golden Knights in the Fortress for the Golden Knights' first home loss of the 2022-23 season by a final score of 3-2. Well, breaking down this game, it's really what you expect when you have the reigning Stanley Cup champion coming into your building, having lost 2 games in a row to inferior opponents. Like, they lost to the Kraken at home 24 hours prior to this game with the Golden Knights. Clearly, we had a motivated Colorado Avalanche team coming in against a Golden Knights team who still have not really played any really difficult games, with exception to the game against Calgary and now this game against Colorado, which, good teams find those way to win those games, and, we're 0-2 in games like that. So again, it's not to be critical on the Golden Knights. It's just one of those moments where, this would have been a big springboard, especially with the Leafs coming in on Monday, to really try and secure some points on this homestand before it really gets difficult with obviously the back-to-back to start this coming week. The big difference in this game was special teams. Now, the Colorado Avalanche have an incredible power play, that's known, and with it shooting over 50% this year, and despite their penalty kill only being 50%, they've been able to make up for it in the margins despite getting off to a kind of a sluggish start. The Golden Knights were 1 for 5 on the power play for this game compared to Colorado's 2 for 2. So ultimately, the special teams wound up being the biggest difference maker in this game. If we had scored with the same proficiency that the Avalanche had done, heck, if we had scored with even half the proficiency that the Avalanche had done, we probably win this game by a score of 4-3. But ultimately, we didn't, and we weren't able to capitalize on the opportunities we were given, especially early on in that third period. And ultimately, that may have been the difference maker in the outcome of this game. We ultimately wound up outshooting the Avalanche 36-25 and beating them 15-4 in the third period. We were 67% or 60% from the faceoff dot. We outhit them 42-37, and we had 27 blocked shots. It was just obscene. Obviously we weren't having to do a lot of blocking since we were on the offense for the majority of the third period, but 27 blocked shots in one game is up there with the Golden Knights record books for most blocked shots in a single game. Ultimately, after the game, you look at the press conferences for Bruce Cassidy and players. Clearly, they were all disappointed. Bruce Cassidy, in particular, made it abundantly clear that he wasn't a fan of all the passing and that no matter how you chalk it up, the Golden Knights definitely let an opportunity go by because of the lack of crisp passing and lack of ability to take advantage on the power play. Fortunately, it's the regular season, and we weren't going to go 81-1, so now the goal is just to go 80-2. As the next on tap for the Golden Knights in the Fortress on Monday night is a date with the Toronto Maple Leafs, who another Premier team in the NHL. It's going to be a tough task, and then immediately after that, 24 hours later, they make the trek to Southern California and link up with the San Jose Sharks at the SAP Center. It's going to be a pretty fun week for the Golden Knights, and hopefully they're able to shake this loss off, as while it sucks, it's still early on in the season, and both the Golden Knights and ultimately the Colorado Avalanche are going to keep getting better throughout the rest of the regular season. I cannot wait for the second tilt between these two teams later on this season, as it's prime time, guns blazing hockey. It's exactly what the NHL expects and exactly what the NHL wants between two of its premier teams. So ultimately, unfortunate recap, Golden Knights lose 3-2 at home to the Colorado Avalanche. Next up, Toronto Maple Leafs. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it, subscribe if you want to catch more of it, comment down below if you've got anything you want to say to me, as I would love to interact with you guys a little bit and try and grow my channel. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one.